Welcome to this episode of Let's Be Civil. On today's episode of Let's Be Civil, I'm speaking with Scott Anderson. As CEO of Pankow, Scott has many responsibilities. Foremost, he provides executive leadership by developing, communicating, and implementing the company's vision, mission, and overall strategic and cultural direction. Scott also oversees the company's external efforts such as sales and marketing. So welcome everybody to another edition of Let's Be Civil, the civil engineering podcast. And today we're going all the way to the top. I don't know, can you get any higher than a CEO at a very large international company? We have Scott Anderson from Pankow with us today. Scott and I have known each other for quite a while through some committee work that we have been on together. And I like when I get a note back from him saying, I'm interested in anything that you guys are doing. And so I always appreciate that kind of a response back, especially from somebody in the position that he's in, because he doesn't have to call me back or email me back if he doesn't want to, but he does every time. And so I greatly appreciate it. So Scott, welcome. Why don't you take a couple seconds and kind of let us know how you ascended to the heights that you are. And I see you're actually, with your background, you're looking down on infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, John. My pleasure. The background you see is actually a digital rendering called Panco City, lovingly. These are all buildings at one point or another that were built and/or designed and built by Charles Panco Builders over the years. It is actually now a live 3D model that you can fly through, but it all started probably 35, 40 years ago with our founder, Charles J. Panco, who commissioned an artist to every 5 years do updated Panco cities. And 15, 20 years ago, we turned them virtual. But no, as you mentioned, we got to know each other through the American Concrete Institute. That is an opportunity that came to me because of my employment with Charles Panco Builders. I grew up on the East Coast, got undergraduate degrees in civil engineering and math, moved to California to pursue a master's in structural engineering, and was just fortunate enough that while I was there, I got introduced through an evening seminar, industry roundtable, to the then president of Panco, a guy named Dean Steffen, and I was hooked. His message was one of collaboration, innovation, finding better ways to build, and supporting your client's success through research and development, which you did not hear any of that in the construction segment back in the mid-90s. So I graduated from Stanford on a Thursday night and got in the car, drove down the coast, started my career with Panco on the next Monday morning. And that was almost 25 years ago to the day. So I've held just about every role in the company along the way and gotten to experience all the wonderful things and all the challenges of our industry. And here I am, 2020, in the middle of the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic, which is how I kicked off my tenure as a CEO. So I know how to pick my spots.
So what was the position that you held when you first started?
Back then, the entry-level engineering position was called field engineer. Nowadays, we call that role project engineer. But yeah, it was the sort of the last line of defense, the people that are breaking down the drawings into manageable bites and either managing subcontractors or managing our own direct crews, as we are a self-performer of structural concrete. So my experience back then started from the boots on the ground, pouring mud and helping coordinate subcontractors as part of a field team.
So I want to come back to that, but before we sort of move forward, you mentioned that you happened to go to this evening seminar. What was it? Because that was clearly a turning point for you.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't go to these, right?
There was a champion, a I don't remember what they called him. He always made it clear, a guy named Russell Clough, he was an advisory faculty member. He was not a doctored professor, but he had been a former graduate of Stanford, and he worked in the CM department. But what he made sure was that he used his industry contacts so that every Wednesday night he hosted a panel, and they'd have 3 to 4 folks from the industry to come talk about their experience, relationships, business, what was working, what wasn't working, what were some of the important lessons. You know, it's in some ways it was a classroom version of what you're doing here so many years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an opportunity that many people passed up on, but I was addicted. I was hooked. Every Wednesday night I felt like, good, bad, or otherwise, I was going to hear from people who were out there to help me understand what was really going on in the industry, because I didn't have that experience. I had gone straight from undergraduate into graduate and had never actually worked in construction.
Right. Well, I think you and I, we have talked about this before, and in the things that we've been involved in together, this kind of stuff comes up, that it's unfortunate, but students don't always take advantage of these kind of opportunities. And, just imagine if you had not gone to that Wednesday night seminar, where would you be today? I mean, you wouldn't be where you are. And who knows what your career path might have been like. And so, and I think you would agree, you encourage students to take advantage of every opportunity, because you just do not know when that one that really is meant for you is going to come along.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put yourself out there, and even, the same message applies after graduation. I encourage all of our employees to find industry associations, to find mentors, not just within the company, but out in the industry. The opportunity to learn directly through relationships, it's another form of learning. And that's why I really do appreciate how much I've seen over the years. The academic world has shifted and adjusted so that it's not just the lessons and the book learning, but it's the team projects. It's the partnering with outside industry. It's the things that help you build that network of relationships, because like you said, you never know when that life-changing opportunity, the thing that sparked your passion and changes you forever, is going to come around. You're not going to get that opportunity if you don't get out there. Right.
So how many different, so you stayed with the same company. You haven't had to move in terms of to other parts of the country that I'm aware of. But so how many different positions have you actually held, going from your first field engineer position to CEO?
Yeah, well, I am fortunate in one regard. I mean, I guess it just depends on what you like. We had been mostly focused on California over the years. We've been around since 1963, so we've done work in almost half the states, but our focus really is on California. Early in my career, I wanted to learn, and I knew nothing. And so I put it out there and made it clear, I will move anywhere, anytime, on a moment's notice. Put me on whatever challenging projects there are. I was trying to create my own opportunities, create my own luck.
Sure.
And so I did move half a dozen times in my first 3 years.
Okay.
But it was all basically within California, except for one hop up to Oregon. But yeah, I graduated through the normal traditional field operations positions. I was a field engineer. I was a project engineer. I had gotten an opportunity, and maybe this is another one of those lessons, is don't be too quick to judge. Keep an open mind, because you never know when that thing you think you're going to hate opens doors for you. Early in my career, I was a project engineer, and I'd had the opportunity to become a quality assurance manager for a very specific project that I was already on.
Okay.
And it just sounded like the worst thing ever. Everybody looked at the quality person as the police. They kind of looked like you worked for the owner, not for the construction team. I took the opportunity, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to let it be the cliche of what it had been. I'm going to have this team feel like quality is all of our responsibility, not just something we try and, put a show on for the quality assurance manager. It wasn't a normal role in our company, because we did have a culture that quality was built from within, but it was a mandated position by the client on this very large institutional project. And so what I was able to do was I was able to honor what the client had requested, but I changed the culture from all of a sudden, instead of people fighting the quality police, it became a partnership. And that opportunity wound up opening many doors for me in the company because it was a very successful project.
Right.
But at the time, I was seriously considering saying no thank you because it didn't fit the traditional career path.
Right.
And I was, you know, telling myself the story that this isn't going to be fun. I'm going to be looked at as the enemy, and it's going to get me off of my career path. But as it turned out, I was able to bring some leadership and positive energy to the role, change the narrative of the role, and accelerated my growth within the company.
Okay. So I'm sure that when you started, and maybe I'm wrong, you didn't see that you would one day be CEO.
No.
That's a fair statement?
No, it was a bad economy. I had no construction experience, and I was just trying to make sure I learned what the heck I was doing before they figured out I had no idea what I was doing and fired me.
Which never happened.
I managed to make it through, but that, you know, that was ringing in my head was, you know, when you first get hired, you are costing your company money.
Yeah.
And I was always taught that your job was to learn as quickly as you could so that you could start making your company money and not just be an investment. So that was my goal, was to get to the point where I knew I was earning my salary.
So as you advanced, you know, the timing for moving to the next position, you usually don't know about. Somebody comes and says, hey, you know, we're thinking about moving you over to this position or to that. So you talked about one that you didn't really, you know, have much interest in at the time. Which one of the advancements where you were like, man, yeah, I want to get, you know, I was hoping that this was coming.
Yeah, I was lucky early in my career that I had really strong teams and really strong mentors. I moved around a lot, created my own opportunities. I think that accelerated the opportunity for me to build my own internal network, a support system within the company, build a reputation.
Yeah.
And so the first real big promotion was way too early, but about 3 years into my career, I was asked to change regions, to come back to the Bay Area, to be what we called then a project sponsor. But basically it was like a senior level design manager, client relationship manager. And most people that were in that role had 10 to 15 years of experience, and I had 3. And so that was a big deal. It was starting over back into a new market, leaving the LA market that I had been back in for over a couple of years, and taking on a lot of responsibility that I wasn't sure whether or not I was really prepared to handle.
Right.
So not being afraid of making mistakes, always wanting to learn, you know, that was the first really big step in resetting the expectations. And it changes, right? It changes literally what you do every day.
Right.
You may work for the same company, but the day-to-day life, from the project manager or project engineer role to this senior level manager role, was a vastly different day-to-day experience and something I had to get used to.
So did you struggle at the beginning?
You know, I was still operating in the hard charger, go, 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 right? When we get into a company, entry level is usually about how quickly and efficiently can you do stuff. And you just go and do.
Oh, right.
Well, at some point or another, as a senior level manager, you really, to be great, you need to be bringing out the best in other people. And you need to learn how to switch modes from doing to managing and hopefully ultimately leading. Because those skill sets of doing, managing, and leading are all different levels of energy, different shifts in where you put your energy.
Right.
So I would say my projects were successful, but I was still sort of a hurricane trying to do it all myself. And I was not a good manager in those early days. And I certainly was not a leader. I was just a hard-charging doer that was trying to get things done through sheer will. And the only reason my career continued to evolve and grow was because I was able to step back and see it and start to realize, for me to be a great manager and then start thinking about what I could be as a leader, I needed to slow down and engage with my teams and start listening and doing more through others, because they were enlisted and because they were feeling valued. And that was a change. That was a big shift for me coming out of the Uber doer model.
So would you say that was the hardest time you had in your rise through your career, or was there some other circumstance where it was pretty tough in whatever position you held for some amount of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. 25 years into my career, there's a lot of chapters now. I would say that transition was the one that caused me the most introspection. I was not going to change unless I saw that there was something better.
Right.
I had to do that. Nobody was asking. Nobody was telling me. My projects were successful, but it was about me looking in the mirror and realizing that behavior was self-limiting. And if I wanted to continue to grow, I had to change.
Right.
A few years later, I had the opportunity heading into what is now known as the Great Recession. I know how to pick my spots. I assumed responsibility for all of our Bay Area operations in 2009, and construction companies don't really feel a recession on day one.
Right.
When a recession hits, typically we have backlog. Recessions hit later.
Yeah.
So the mortgage crisis that started in 2008 really started to hit us by the end of 2009 going into 2010. And that was a period of time when Northern California, for my firm, was struggling. And we needed to come together as a team, and we needed to find a new path and a new way. And we were failing as a business, and people were unhappy. And so my greatest leadership challenge was what we accomplished coming out of the Great Recession in rebuilding Northern California in the years 11, 12, 13. And that's pretty, that story is one I'm proud of. I'd say that was my greatest challenge as a leader. Until now, you can fast forward and say, what's it like to step into the role of CEO and immediately find yourself in a global pandemic? That's the chapter we're writing now.
Yep. We'll see what happens here in hopefully in a few months and not a few years, but it might be longer. So, how did your team respond to you? So you made some of these changes. There's my wife in the background, so she can say hello. She's trying to sneak in, even though she's being recorded on the podcast. So
guest star.
You're gonna have one of your kids come run through the image here. How did the team, how did the people that work around you react? I mean, did people say to you, hey, we notice a difference in you? Did you just feel a change in the vibe that was in the office and the places that you were working? What told you that you were making the right changes? Because it's one thing to look at yourself and say, I need to do something, but your choice of something else isn't necessarily going to be the right choice or the best choice. So, what was the feedback that told you were on the right track and keep going down this line?
Yeah, when I had the opportunity to become the regional manager, vice president for the Bay Area, I was fortunate enough that in a good economy, my company had offered me the opportunity to work with a coach, a development coach. And that experience, which had started with just a simple 3-month engagement that we extended, that opened my eyes. That got me reinvigorated about self-awareness and what it means to be a leader and what it means to engage others in a journey. And so while I had really started a journey on my own when I was growing from that Uber doer to being a better manager, this was the part of the journey that I could never have done alone. And it started with this one-on-one coaching relationship, but it was that energy that when faced with the challenge of the failing business and really at that point inconsistent cultures and trying to bring business units together, I called upon that coach and we worked together to create what had been Panco's first ever facilitated leadership development program. And we rolled that program out under the guise of a new kind of business planning, because these were radically different concepts than what we were used to. Construction was very buttoned up and command and control, and everybody needs to be perfect and strong, and you don't ask for help, you don't talk about your feelings. This coaching program was very different. And so we introduced it through the lens of business planning, but that opened the door to engage people in really what it would mean to come together as a team and to see each other more clearly, required us to see ourselves more clearly. And that really opened up the doors, and it's a model that we've replicated and turned into a number of different leadership development and leadership training opportunities at Panco. But yeah, that program also required me as the leader to model the behaviors in front of my team, to put myself out there and to tell them, hey, these are the things I struggle with. And I want you to call me out. I want you to help me on this journey, because I'm not going to grow and change and become a better leader without your support.
Yeah.
And my willingness to do that and put myself out there first, I think that made it easier and opened the door for a different kind of conversation. And Panco has been forever changed since that first leadership program.
So, you know, I think you would agree that most people will hear the story and, you know, well, that would never be me. You know, I don't see, you know, he got lucky. He was right place at the right time. He's dynamic, and you know, people don't see themselves as being able to accomplish these sorts of things, which I suspect, you know, like you even said, you didn't, when you started, didn't ever imagine that you would be in the position you are in today. So if someone says that to you, how do you respond to that when a person comes up to you and says, I just don't see how I could do what you've done, or you know, I don't see those character traits in myself?
Yeah, there's a lot there, but I mean, the first thing I would offer is that leadership isn't about a title, and people don't follow you because of your title. So it works both ways. If you're not in a leadership role, you can still influence, inspire, engage, and it's about that dynamic, that relationship. If you have a title and you think that the title alone means you're a leader, well, you're probably missing an opportunity, because people aren't going to go along on a journey and accomplish great things because you told them to. It's going to be because they believe in the journey, and they either believe in you, or they believe in your message, or they believe in the vision you've created together, and they're going for themselves. And so anybody can find themselves in a situation where there's a need, and they can fill that space by being an engaged partner, by finding out what people really want, what they really believe. And the attitude matters, right? The attitude you bring to the table. We changed our company when our founder was alive, never had written down a set of core values or a mission or a vision. We just all followed Charlie's lead because he was an amazing leader. But in those years since he passed away, we've had the opportunity to create our first ever set of vision, mission, and values, and amend them and update them along the journey. And the first line in our vision is seeing the possibilities, right? If you're not able to look up, and many engineers, you follow your gift and you can get lost in the problem and only see problems. And so that attitude that we only need to find one solution. So let's keep our eyes up. Let's understand the constraints because they're important, but let's not deviate from the idea that where we're going requires us to see what is possible, not what is here today, but what can be. Right. And then the attitude you bring makes all the difference in the world. Giving people hope, giving people a reason to know that their opinion matters. That's what helps engage the power in a team. And the second line in our vision is engage the power in people. And so this idea of seeing the possibilities, engaging the power in people, and delivering value in everything you do, that's what we stand for. And anyone connected with their passion to a purpose can be a leader. Right.
Well, you've got me wanting to go in about 4 or 5 different directions at this point in time, but I'll take 2. And then I'm gonna, as we wind things down, I'll just say now that I'm gonna be sending you a note sometime, maybe like a year from now, saying, will you come back on and let's talk again, because there's so much more here to talk with you about. But first of 2 things. One is, as we talked about at the start, we got to know each other at ACI, and in particular, serving on the advisory. I forget it's a scholarship council for ACI that our duty was to help disseminate fellowship and scholarship funds to students. So this, I would, from your guys' perspective, is a give back. I'm sure you guys would look at it as a give. I mean, for me, it was a give back in offering up my time to the process. But you actually contribute funds to what's going on there. So why don't we talk a little bit about the company's view on helping up and coming prospective professionals, and so maybe not just the ACI things, but what are the kind of things that Pankow does to encourage young adults to take this kind of a career path?
Thank you. Mr. Panco, Charlie Panco, always believed talent can come from anywhere. You know, his background, his dad was a builder. He had an engineering background, but he considered himself first and foremost a builder. And so whether the next great idea was going to come from a person who just graduated out of school, or whether it was going to come from a bag-wearing carpenter that had never been past high school, he believed in people. And so we've always looked for opportunities to continue to reinvest in our communities. ACI, Charlie had been a national president. Panco as a company has actually had, for a fairly small size company, we've had 3 national presidents. We believe in the work of ACI because they are always looking to improve the industry, to eliminate waste, to solve problems. So the Scholarship Council is one such venue. I'm thrilled to have been out there working on the Scholarship Council for close to 20 years now, which is mind-boggling. But when Mr. Panco passed away, part of his estate went to creating a nonprofit called Charles Panco Foundation. You can see that group at pancofoundation.org on the web. But they fund research, innovation to help our industry be more efficient. And so that foundation also created a fellowship in the name Charles Panco Fellowship at ACI. And so part of my responsibilities as chair of the Scholarship Council are to look out for the overall governance, but also to help monitor the distribution of funds for that one fellowship, which we're still proud to have alive and well. But globally at Panco, you know, we also get involved in the ACE Mentor program. We have a couple partner charter schools that we work with. And the reality is there's a lot of headlines out there about a shrinking workforce, whether that's the trades or whether that's just less people in the market than there are positions. COVID has flipped that dynamic, but absent the current environment, we were heading down a path where there were more jobs than job seekers for the first time, generationally speaking. And so part of our goal in helping to lead the industry is find ways to be more labor efficient, find ways to automate, innovate using fabrication, prefabricated elements, modularization, but also we want to make a construction career exciting. We want to make a construction career fun. And so getting out of the old pattern of battling it out, fighting it out, it's got a pretty bad reputation still to this day, our industry does. But we're trying to bring tech and innovation and make it exciting and passionate and collaborative. And so we have a BHAG, business planning, label for big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's flip the curve, and flipping the curve is a tip of the hat to a productivity study that was done first at SIFE at Stanford Center for Integrated Facilities Engineering that showed the design and construction industry was basically the only industry, non-farm industry in the last 70 years that had become less productive, less dollars of product put in place per hour of effort. And we believe that needs to end, and we believe it can end. And so, yeah, we're looking for ways throughout, our communities to invest in helping find a way to bring technology and to engage the power and people in a different way, to eliminate the waste and to deliver more sustained value for not just for the business and the industry, but for the environment. And that's something I'm very proud of. It's not an easy hill to climb. We haven't won anything yet, but we're very excited about that piece of this journey. We think that COVID, one of the things that will come out of this pandemic, for all the bad, I believe that our world, but I believe our industry will be forever changed. I believe we will look at work life, commuting rhythms differently. What is possible working from home will open up more broadly. The use of technology like Zoom will open up more broadly. And I hope what we'll find in another 6 months to a year to 2 years is that as many bad things that came out of COVID, a lot of great things came in helping shift our workforce into a more productive and safe environment in the future.
We were talking before coming on the show that there are people that are having to do things now today that they were swearing they would never do, or thought that they would never do in terms of these kind of maybe meetings or ways of doing business. And we both agreed that there are going to be people that are going to say to themselves, I never thought that I would see that as a good way to approach things or to conduct business, but boy, this changed my mind. I mean, they got thrust into it. So there was no, they couldn't scratch and claw to try to get out of it because they had no choice. And as a result, and so I agree with you, as a result, there's going to be long-lasting changes throughout the society, throughout the world as a consequence of this. But you really set me up nicely for this other part that I wanted to talk to you about. So I can't remember how much, if we have at all talked, how the civil engineering program at Texas State is technology focused. That we are incorporating into all of our classes some component of what we call technology enhanced infrastructure. Street lingo would be smart infrastructure, but technology means a lot of things and not just necessarily smart things. But we see ourselves kind of in that same realm, that what you're talking about, in terms of making some substantive changes to the way civil engineering is moving forward. Civil engineering education. So one of the things that we're telling the students and prospective students is this is where the industries are going. This is where the construction industry and the civil engineering profession are going, and that we're going to be looking at structures in a different way, paying much more attention to the life cycle, monitoring them in ways that we haven't done before. And maybe, I don't know how much COVID's going to have an impact on that kind of thought process, but because I don't think it matters too much that happened or didn't happen. It might impact what we monitor. But would you agree that the use of sensing devices and the monitoring of structures, not just post construction but during construction, and how we're going to view the things that we design and build, we're going to view them differently, as opposed to me just giving you a design. So I'm a structures person, and I hand over to you a design, and I walk away and say, I hope you enjoy your building. That I think things are going to be different today. Do you guys see that as well, or what's your view of structures and construction going forward?
Yeah, it's the hardest part to overcome is how fragmented the way the industry works is, because that's a barrier to innovation. But there's no doubt the convergence of processing speeds increasing and data transfer speeds, 5G increasing, and the idea of the cost of sensors and what they can 3D print now, all those things converging, it's going to be a fact. I mean, I hope very quickly to find myself in a reality where you're no longer ever taking concrete cylinders and breaking them in a lab, right, that you're simply measuring the strength of the concrete in sensors remotely directly on your smart device.
Right.
And it's telling you when you're time to strip the forms.
Right.
So
right.
I think there's no question that's exactly where we have to be headed, because now the data is going to dominate, and the ability to understand the data, control the data, and or at least be using the data with the intelligent systems to be able to have predictive analytics everywhere. That's something that, again, we can't claim victory and say we're already doing it, but we understand it's right there for the taking.
Right.
And the smarter we can get faster, the more impactful we're going to be as a company moving forward.
Right. And long-term performance of the infrastructure, that. Well, so let me ask you this as kind of a follow-on. Do you see yourselves being involved with an infrastructure project for its life? I mean, do you see that things would change from constructing it in the way that I had mentioned about the designer, old ways we would just hand off the design and then somebody would take it and build it, and our part would be finished, and you'd be paid, and unless there was an issue, to come back, but that would be it. We'd be moving on to the next project. Do you foresee us moving to a model where we don't let go of the structure, that we're all in it together for the life of the structure, and we're going to be collectively watching and and keeping it functioning properly until the day comes that it's no longer feasible to maintain.
Well, at a minimum, I think you're spot on that whether it's infrastructure, we're just a building contractor, but I see infrastructure projects, and I think there's a parallel there with institutional owner clients. If you're a university that's going to build a building and operate it for its life cycle, a hospital, I think there is going to be a partnership where maybe it's not that the builder stays on board and continues to participate actively for a 50-year life cycle, but that the builder and the client are partnered so that everything that goes into the design and construction is ready to be seamlessly handed off to that owner and ongoing operation and maintenance team. And I do think that intelligent structures are a part of that future that's happening now in smaller ways, and it'll continue to grow, that these will be more living, breathing structures, that we're getting data from sensors that are ingrained and embedded in the materials, in the systems. And it's an exciting future state when you think about what is possible.
But right. So what do you think is, so we see this as a transformation. I mean, we're working on some research, but also some papers that, we see this as a truly transformative moment in time relative to the industry, to the profession, to the education of the students. The only way this is going to really move forward is you need to be able to hire people that have the understanding and the knowledge to say to you, hey, we need to do these things in structures moving forward and how we function. What do you see as like the next big thing for Pankow, if you're able to divulge any of your secrets? But
I mean, there's a lot that I'm excited about, but a couple of things that are easy in small sound bites to share. One of them is just a very human element of, if you think about the right people, the right talent, either helping set your company up to grow and continue to be growing, or it becomes a limiting factor. I'm very excited about the fact that we've changed our org chart. We've changed our organizational structure. Instead of the old model of a two-dimensional ladder you're trying to climb, we are very much set up now as a network organization, a network of people and relationships. And so a lot of the hiring constraints that used to be just box checking, we've just dropped. We've dropped, and we've said, what we're looking for is certain experiences and attitude. And if we can find people with those experiences and attitude and bring them in, then we can provide the additional experiential learning and training to grow them. Obviously, the higher education, the traditional engineering degree, CM degree programs are still a core for us, but we didn't want to have to only rely upon that core because, there's great competition for a limited pool of people. And so while we continue to bring in from the traditional higher education universities, we've also really untapped, opened up and we're tapping into a new realm of people that don't have those backgrounds, but have the right attitude and energy and want to learn. Right. And so now within our organization, you can come in and you're not going to be limited in which opportunities and which roles you can take on. And that to me it's a play for engaging the power in our people, but also letting our company be more of a parallel and a mirror of a diversity based on the communities we live in and that we work in. We haven't, like many construction companies, been an accurate reflection from a diversity standpoint of the communities we live in and work in. And these changes to our org chart are allowing for that. The second thing I would offer is it's really just about diversification in general. To be able to be partners with your clients and to look for ways that the people that are buying construction services, if they want to buy off of the traditional ways that frankly weren't working efficiently, the ways that were leading to a decreasing productivity in our industry, well, then we just need to have the discipline to stay away from them.
Right.
So, when you're engaging innovative spirit and trying to use technology to improve our industry, you have to go and find clients that believe that matters. Right. Otherwise, you're going to wind up having a business that's not an accurate reflection of your culture. Right. So sometimes that's difficult, but we want to prove we can be disciplined to stay away from the clients that want what this industry's been versus helping us carry the industry forward to what it can be.
Well, and as you say that, I would say that should be true for the graduating senior or the students as they're working their way through their education and into their career. Is they should be looking for employment, maybe in a similar fashion. Is that you don't necessarily have to go down the standard road that somebody coming out of a CM program or a CE program or whatever might do. Just because that's the traditional thing, you might be better off, and your employer might be better off by you taking the, maybe, like as they say, the road less traveled, and finding yourself being part of a diversity, a shift in diversity within the company in terms of the kind of people that they bring on the staff. So I think I would say that to the student body, as well as think that way. I think it would be appropriate for them too. So I think that I'm looking at my time here, because I could keep talking to you for as long as we wanted to talk. So we probably should call it a conversation. So boy, I appreciate seeing you. We haven't seen each other for a while, and so being able to do this and not via email or some kind of communication like that, but a chance to actually see each other and talk has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of our Let's Be Civil podcast series, and you'll be hearing from me. So
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Pleasure. Hey, did you know that this came out of San Antonio?
I did not.
Yes. So there was a nurse at a hospital in San Antonio that was the one that said 2 taps to the heart was a like, hey, I'm thinking about you and caring about you and that sort of thing. So happened to just catch that on the news here, and boy, it's interesting that it has traveled and has really been picked up that much. But yeah, it was a nurse in San Antonio that was the one that first broadcast that on air. So it's pretty. That's
I appreciate
cool.
that.
Yeah.
It feels right.
Right back to you, man.
Thank you, John. It's great to see you.
Yep. Good to see you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.